Here is a truth most people never admit. Your life is not shaped by your dreams, your motivation, or your potential. It is shaped by your habits. The small things you do when no one is watching. The routines you repeat without thinking. The behaviors you fall back on when life gets hard. And if your habits are weak, your life will be too. But building good habits is not easy. Your brain fights change. Your emotions resist discipline. Your comfort zone pulls you back every time you try to grow. You already know what you should be doing. The real question is why you cannot make yourself do it. Here is the psychology you are not ready for. Your mind is wired to protect you from discomfort, even if that discomfort leads to a better life. And until you understand how to override that instinct, you will keep starting, quitting, and repeating the same cycle. In this audiobook, you will learn how to force your mind into discipline, how to build habits that stick, how to break the patterns that keep you stagnant. Stay with me until the end, because once you understand how to control your habits, you will understand how to control your entire life.
Chapter 1. The truth about why you can't stick to anything. There is a moment you have experienced many times in your life, a moment when you feel ready to change everything. You tell yourself, this is it, this is the time you finally get disciplined. You feel motivated, you feel inspired, you feel energized with a clear vision of the person you want to become. You imagine yourself waking up early, eating clean, working hard, studying, improving, becoming better in every area of your life. And for a short time, it works. The first day feels powerful. The second day feels exciting. The third day feels possible. Then the motivation fades. The energy disappears. Your mind gets tired. Your body protests. The excitement you had in the beginning slowly becomes resistance. The habit you wanted to build starts feeling heavier. The voice inside your head starts whispering, you can do it tomorrow. You deserve a break. One day will not hurt. And before you realize it, the motivation that felt unbreakable collapses. You skip one day, then another, and suddenly you are back where you started. Not because you are weak, not because you lack talent, not because you're lazy, but because no one ever taught you the truth about habits. The truth is simple and powerful. You do not fail because you cannot build habits. You fail because you rely on motivation to build them, and motivation is the most unreliable force in your life. Motivation is emotional. It rises and falls with your mood. It depends on your energy, your environment, your stress, your confidence, your sleep, your mindset, your hormones. It is never stable. It never lasts. So, when you rely on motivation to change your life, you are depending on something that was never designed to support long-term discipline. Your brain is built to protect you from discomfort. It wants to keep you safe. It wants to keep you comfortable. It wants you to repeat what is familiar, even when the familiar is destroying your potential. This is why new habits feel difficult. Anything unfamiliar triggers resistance. Your brain does not understand that the discomfort of growth leads to a better life. It only understands that discomfort feels threatening. So, it tries to stop you. This is the real reason you cannot stay consistent. Your mind is not fighting the habit. It is fighting the discomfort that comes with that habit. Wake up earlier. Discomfort. Exercise. Discomfort. Study. Discomfort. Eat healthy. Discomfort. Journal. Discomfort. Work on goals. Discomfort. Your brain reacts the same way to all of it. It tries to pull you back to what feels easy, predictable, and safe. But safety and growth cannot exist in the same place. What you must understand is this. Your brain is not working against you. It is working for you based on its programming. It is trying to protect you using the wrong strategy. It is using old habits to preserve comfort, not realizing that comfort is the very thing keeping you stuck. The first step to building strong habits is recognizing that discomfort is not danger. Discomfort is a signal of growth. It means you're stepping out of who you have been. It means you're moving toward the person you want to become. When you stop interpreting discomfort as resistance and start interpreting it as transformation, everything changes. Another reason you struggle to stick to habits is identity conflict. You try to build new habits while still identifying as the old version of yourself. You say things like, "I am not disciplined. I am not consistent. I always quit. I can never stick to anything." Your actions cannot outperform the identity you believe in. Your habits may change for a moment, but your identity pulls you back because it feels familiar. You cannot build new habits with an old identity. You must shift your identity from "I am trying to be disciplined" to "I am a disciplined person." From "I hope I can change" to "I am becoming someone who changes." Your habits follow your identity. Your identity shapes your behavior. When you no longer see yourself as someone who fails, failing becomes less natural. When you see yourself as someone who follows through, consistency becomes part of your character. This is why habits feel difficult in the beginning. You're fighting both your programming and your identity. But once both shift, habits begin to feel natural, not because they're easy, but because they align with who you are becoming. There is another truth you must accept. You do not rise to your goals. You fall to the level of your systems. When your goals depend on motivation, you will fail. But when your habits depend on structure, repetition, and simplicity, you will win. The problem is not that you lack discipline. The problem is that your systems are fragile. You try to do too much at once. You overwhelm yourself. You expect perfection. You expect instant transformation. But real change is built through small, consistent actions repeated daily. The person who wins is not the person who starts the strongest. It is the person who continues even when the feeling is gone. That requires something deeper than motivation. It requires commitment. It requires intentional design. It requires emotional awareness. It requires a willingness to feel discomfort without running from it. You must also understand that your environment shapes your habits more than your willpower does. If your environment is filled with distractions, you will be distracted. If your environment is filled with temptation, you will fall into temptation. If your environment makes good habits difficult, you will avoid them. The key to building habits is reducing friction. Make the good habit easy. Make the bad habit inconvenient. Simplify the path to success. Remove the obstacles that trigger old behavior. You fail not because you are incapable, but because your environment keeps you pulling back to your old identity. Change the environment and you change your behavior. The truth about habits is this: you do not fail because you cannot build them. You fail because you expect them to feel easy. But discipline is built in not ease. It is built in repetition. It is built in small victories. It is built in showing up even when you don't want to. It is built in proving to yourself again and again that you are capable of consistency. You must redefine what it means to build a habit. It is not about perfection. It is not about intensity. It is not about motivation. It is about identity. It is about systems. It is about emotional control. It is about awareness. And ultimately, it is about the willingness to build a life that your future self will thank you for. This chapter is the doorway, a new beginning, a realization that the reason you could not stick to habits before has nothing to do with who you are, and everything to do with what you did not yet understand. Now you understand. Now you see the truth. And with that truth, you are ready for the next step. You are ready to build habits that last.
Chapter 2. Rewiring the reward system in your mind. There is a powerful truth about human behavior that most people never realize. You do not rise to the level of your goals. You rise to the level of your brain's reward system.
every habit you have ever built, good or bad, exists because your brain was rewarded for it. Not rewarded in a dramatic way, rewarded in a subtle biological way, a way you barely noticed. Your brain does not care about discipline, achievement, or long-term success. It cares about dopamine, the chemical of desire, anticipation, and satisfaction. The chemical that whispers, "Do that again." The chemical that shapes your routines without your permission. If you want to force yourself to build good habits, you must learn how to control this reward system. Because until you change what your brain interprets as rewarding, you will always feel pulled back to the habits that harm you. The brain is simple in its rules. It repeats what feels good and avoids what feels difficult. But what feels good is not always what is good for you. And what feels difficult is often what you need the most. You scroll your phone because it gives instant pleasure. You procrastinate because it reduces immediate stress. You eat unhealthy food because it creates quick comfort. None of these habits are logical. They are biochemical. Your brain gets dopamine quickly and easily, so it encourages you to repeat those behaviors. Good habits, however, often work in the opposite direction. They give discomfort first and reward later. Exercise hurts before it feels good. Studying feels mentally tiring before it becomes mastery. Waking up early feels painful before it becomes productive. Saving money feels restrictive before it becomes empowering. Your brain prefers the habits that reward it now, not later. This is why your intentions fail. It is not your mindset. It is not your willpower. It is not your potential. It is the timing of the reward. To change your habits, you must change the timing of the reward. You must teach your brain to experience satisfaction immediately from the habits that serve you. This process is not about lying to yourself. It is about retraining your neurological pathways. It is about shifting your brain's expectation of reward. To begin this shift, you must understand the loop your mind operates on. Cue, behavior, reward. Every habit follows this pattern. When you crave distraction, there is something that triggers it. When you fall into comfort behaviors, there is a moment that initiates it. When you choose what feels easy, your brain is predicting the reward it will receive. To break the loop, you cannot only change the behavior. You must change the reward. You must create pleasure where your brain normally expects pain. You must associate progress with satisfaction. You must make the habits you want feel rewarding in real time. This requires awareness. After you complete a positive behavior, no matter how small, pause and acknowledge it. Your brain responds to recognition. Celebrate the effort. Notice the progress. Even a few seconds of conscious appreciation reinforces the habit loop. The small acknowledgement releases dopamine, teaching your brain that the behavior was worth repeating. Your habits grow where your attention goes. If you only notice the discomfort of a good habit, your brain will resist it. If you notice the reward within that discomfort, your brain will support it. Another powerful method is pairing small pleasures with disciplined actions. For example, if you want to build a reading habit, choose a comfortable environment, a warm drink, or calm music. This pairs the discipline with sensory reward. If you want to build a workout habit, allow yourself a moment of pride afterward or a ritual that signals accomplishment. Over time, your brain begins to anticipate pleasure from the discipline itself. This is how you shift from forcing a habit to craving it. Your brain is constantly scanning your environment for patterns that feel rewarding. If you do not deliberately assign reward to progress, your brain will assign reward to avoidance. This is why you fall back into old habits even when you want change. Your brain is simply following the strongest pattern it knows. The habit with the strongest reward wins. But you can change what your brain sees as valuable. You can make discipline feel good. You can make effort feel meaningful. You can make growth feel satisfying. The key is repetition with recognition. There is another layer to understanding your reward system. Your brain seeks short-term comfort not because you are weak, but because it is ancient. It evolved to prioritize survival. Comfort meant safety. Energy conservation meant survival. Food meant reward. Rest meant reward. Predictability meant reward. Anything that carried risk or discomfort was avoided. Your modern goals conflict with ancient wiring. You want long-term growth, but your brain is designed for short-term comfort. You want self-improvement, but your brain is programmed to avoid unnecessary effort. This is why building good habits feels unnatural in the beginning. You are pushing against millions of years of biological programming. But the good news is this: the brain is flexible. It adapts. It rewires. It follows whatever pattern you repeat consistently. Your reward system is not fixed. It is trainable. The first time you run, your brain protests. The 20th time, your brain adapts. The 100th time, your brain starts craving the progress. The discomfort fades, the reward strengthens. This is how habits shift from pain to pleasure. But this shift will not happen on its own. You must initiate the new pattern. You must repeat it until it becomes familiar. You must give your brain time to adjust. One of the greatest mistakes people make is expecting immediate comfort from new habits. That expectation sets you up for failure. Good habits feel uncomfortable until they become familiar. Familiarity is what reduces resistance. Your job is not to eliminate discomfort. Your job is to guide your brain through it long enough for new pathways to form. This is why small progress matters more than perfection. Your brain responds to consistency, not intensity. Daily repetition creates neural strength. Even small wins create dopamine. Even small steps create momentum. When your brain begins associating growth with reward, the battle ends. You stop needing to push yourself through discipline. You begin feeling naturally pulled toward it. What once felt heavy becomes normal. What once felt forced becomes automatic. What once felt impossible becomes part of your identity. And this is the power of knowing how your reward system works. You stop blaming yourself for inconsistency. You understand that your brain was trained for comfort. And instead of fighting yourself, you begin training yourself. Every act of discipline becomes easier when you understand the biology behind it. You no longer feel broken, you feel informed. You feel capable. You feel in control. Because once you learn how to control the reward system in your mind, building habits becomes less about motivation and more about rewiring. Less about inspiration and more about design. And that design is what carries you into the next level of your evolution. You are not forcing yourself to change. You are teaching your brain how to want the change. And once your brain wants it, your life transforms. You become consistent without struggle. You become disciplined without relying on emotion. You become unstoppable, not because discipline is easy, but because your brain finally supports the life you are trying to build. And this is where your transformation truly begins. When you stop waiting for motivation and start understanding the science of reward, you gain control of your habits and the future they create. Now you are ready for the next step. The step where you no longer battle your behavior, but your identity. Chapter 3 awaits.
Chapter 3: Breaking the Identity That Keeps You Stuck. There is something far more powerful than your habits, something deeper than your goals, something stronger than motivation and more consistent than willpower. It is the force that quietly drives every decision you make, every limit you accept, and every standard you live by. That force is identity. Identity is not what you say you want. It is what you believe you are. It is the silent story you repeat about yourself when no one is listening. Your habits do not just reflect your identity, they protect it, they reinforce it, they repeat it. If you believe you are someone who always quits, you will stop when it gets hard. If you believe you are someone who struggles with discipline, your behavior will find reasons to avoid responsibility. If you believe you are someone who cannot change, you will stay exactly where you are. Your identity shapes your future long before your actions do. The problem is that most people never choose their identity. They inherit it, they absorb it, they collect it. They build it from opinions, criticism, childhood experiences, past failures, and casual comments that carried more weight than they should have. Someone told you that you were lazy. Someone told you that you were inconsistent. Someone told you that you always messed things up. Someone told you that discipline was not in your nature.
and slowly, without realizing it, you accepted their voice as your truth. Their beliefs became your self-perception. Their doubt became your limitations. A single moment became a lifelong label. The brain loves identity because identity creates predictability. When you believe you are a certain type of person, your brain feels safe. It knows what to expect. It knows how to respond. Even if the identity is destructive, it is familiar, and the familiar always feels safer than the unknown. This is why change feels so uncomfortable. Changing your habits challenges your identity. Your brain does not resist the change itself. It resists the uncertainty attached to becoming a new version of you. A new identity means new expectations, new behaviors, new standards, new boundaries, new beliefs about what you are capable of. And while that may sound exciting, it also feels threatening to the brain. The old version of you has been surviving, and survival is enough for the mind to defend it. To break the identity that keeps you stuck, you must confront the story that shaped it. You must ask yourself questions most people never ask. When did I decide this is who I am? Who told me this story? Why did I believe them? And most importantly, is it true? The first step in reshaping identity is awareness. You must become conscious of the labels you carry. You must recognize the language you use when speaking about yourself. Words like I always, I never, I cannot, I am just the kind of person who are clues that you are speaking from identity, not reality. The second step is challenge. You must question the truth of those beliefs. You must look for evidence that contradicts the identity you accepted. For example, if you believe you always give up, ask yourself if that is true. Did you learn to walk without giving up? Did you learn to read, ride a bike, or overcome something painful in life? You have evidence of persistence. The identity that says otherwise is incomplete. Identity is not formed by truth. It is formed by repetition. If you repeat a negative belief often enough, your brain believes it without confirmation. The same is true for positive beliefs. If you repeat an empowering identity often enough, your brain accepts that as well. This brings us to the most important psychological shift you can make. Identity must change before behavior does. You do not force new habits onto an old identity. You become the kind of person who naturally performs those habits. For example, if your goal is to get fit, instead of saying, I'm trying to work out consistently, reframe it as, I am a person who trains their body. If your goal is to improve your finances, instead of saying, I'm trying to save money, shift it to, I am disciplined with my money. If your goal is to study more, instead of saying, I will try to focus, shift it to, I am someone who prioritizes knowledge. This is not pretending. This is directing. Your brain waits for identity before it supports behavior. When the identity is clear, the actions become consistent. There is a psychological principle called self-congruence. It means your mind works to keep your actions aligned with your identity. If you believe you are undisciplined, discipline will always feel unnatural. If you believe you are growing, growth becomes your default. The identity you commit to determines the habits you protect. Many people try to change their lives the wrong way. They try to change their habits while keeping the same identity. They chase transformation while holding on to who they used to be. That creates internal conflict. It feels like pushing a heavy weight uphill. Progress collapses under the pressure of a story that was never yours to carry. But when identity shifts first, habits follow with less resistance. You begin acting from alignment, not force. You no longer see the new habit as something you are trying to become, you see it as something you already are. That mental shift removes friction, doubt, and emotional negotiation. To break the identity that keeps you stuck, you must create a new identity built on evidence, not imagination. Start small. Keep promises to yourself. Follow through on tiny commitments. Every time you do what you said you would do, your brain receives proof that the old identity is losing power. Identity is not changed in speeches. Identity is changed in small, repeated victories. Walk for 10 minutes even when you don't want to. That's identity changing. Eat one healthy meal when you'd rather not. That's identity changing. Open the book and read 5 pages when you feel tired. That's identity changing. Every small action is a vote for the person you are becoming. No single action transforms you. Your transformation comes from the accumulation of small choices repeated consistently over time. When people say you become what you repeatedly do, they are speaking of identity. Your actions do not just reflect your character, they create it. The most powerful identity shift occurs when you stop seeing discipline as something external and start seeing it as something internal. Discipline is not a punishment. It is a language of self-respect. It is the decision to act in alignment with your future, not your impulses. It is the evidence that proves to your brain that you are becoming the kind of person who follows through. As your identity evolves, your habits evolve. As your habits evolve, your life evolves. And what once felt impossible becomes normal. Not because the world changed, but because you did. This is the moment you understand that your identity is not a prison. It is a draft. It can be edited. It can be rewritten. It can be upgraded. You are not defined by the version of you that once survived. You are defined by the version of you that is ready to live. And now that you understand the power of identity, you are prepared for the next step. The step where you stop making discipline difficult and begin making success feel natural. The next chapter begins the transition from force to flow. You are becoming someone new.
Chapter 4. The Art of Making Hard Things Feel Easy. There is a moment in every journey when discipline stops feeling like a constant battle and begins to feel like momentum. The problem is most people never make it far enough to experience that shift. They quit long before it arrives because the early steps are heavy. They require effort, intention, and discomfort. We are conditioned to believe that anything difficult is a sign to stop, that resistance means something is wrong, that the strain is too much. But pressure is not the enemy. Pressure is the sculptor of strength. To force yourself to build good habits, you must master something deeper than willpower. You must master the art of making hard things feel easy. Not because the task gets lighter, but because your perception of the weight changes. People who are disciplined are not superhuman. They simply experience discomfort without treating it as a threat. They have trained their minds to interpret difficult moments differently. They do not run from resistance, they expect it. They understand it as part of progress. The first step in making hard things easier is eliminating unnecessary friction. Most people fail at building habits not because the habit itself is impossible, but because the path to performing it is cluttered with obstacles. They make the habit harder than it needs to be. They rely on willpower when the environment could be doing half the work for them. For example, if your goal is to read every morning, placing the book in another room forces you to rely on motivation. But placing the book on your pillow before you sleep ensures your first decision aligns with your intention. If your goal is to exercise before work, keeping your clothes folded in a drawer invites hesitation, delay, and negotiation. Laying them out the night before eliminates one decision and reduces resistance. Small adjustments remove friction and increase consistency. Discipline is not only a battle of desire, it is a battle of access. The easier it is to start, the more likely you will follow through. This principle also applies to removing the triggers that feed the habits you want to break. If your phone is the distraction, do not keep it next to you. If junk food interrupts your diet, do not keep it in the house. If your computer leads to unproductive browsing, use apps to block those sites during work hours. The absence of temptation is not weakness, it is strategy. Success favors the environment built to support it. The second step is learning to reduce the emotional weight of effort. The mind amplifies difficulty when you think about the entire journey at once. You imagine months of discipline, years of commitment, endless effort. The task becomes so big in your mind that your body refuses to start. The secret is simple. Do not focus on the entire road. Focus only on the first step. Tell yourself you will read for 5 minutes. Tell yourself you will exercise for 5 minutes. Tell yourself you will write 1 paragraph. Tell yourself you will clean 1 corner of the room. When the brain sees a task as small, it cooperates.
It gives permission. It removes emotional resistance. And the magic lies in this. Once you start, momentum takes over. 5 minutes becomes 20. One paragraph becomes 2 pages. One drawer becomes a clean room. It is easier to continue a task than it is to initiate it. The hardest part of any habit is the beginning. Progress is carried by motion, not motivation. The third step is to stop negotiating with your emotions. The mind is skilled at creating excuses that sound reasonable. You worked all day, you are tired, you deserve to rest. You are stressed, you should relax. You will start tomorrow because tomorrow will be easier. Your brain will always present an argument that protects comfort. You cannot beat this voice by debating with it. You beat it by giving it no vote. Emotion can exist, but it does not get to decide. You can feel tired and still work. You can feel unmotivated and still act. You can feel discomfort and still move forward. Most people wait to feel ready. They wait to feel energized. They wait to feel inspired. They wait for the perfect moment. But that moment almost never comes. The people who win are the ones who learn to act in the presence of emotion, not the absence of it. The fourth step in making hard things feel easy is reframing how you interpret effort. Many people have been conditioned to believe that ease equals success, that comfort means happiness, that the path of least resistance is the goal. But comfort is not fulfillment. Comfort is maintenance. Comfort keeps you alive, but growth gives you a life worth living. When you begin seeing effort as investment rather than punishment, your relationship with discipline changes. You stop saying, "I have to," and start saying, "I get to." You stop seeing habits as sacrifices and start seeing them as construction. Every difficult action becomes a brick in the life you want to build. With each repetition, the weight feels less like a burden and more like proof that you are capable of carrying it. The fifth step is mastering the power of small wins. Large goals don't build confidence, small victories do. Every time you follow through on your commitment, your brain receives evidence that the new identity is real. This is how the mind shifts from resistance to desire. Each completed action becomes a vote for the person you want to become. Enough votes create belief. Belief creates momentum. Small wins repeated consistently eventually create a life that looks impossible to those who only chase big moments. The final step in making hard things feel easy is embracing routine. The mind craves predictability. When your habits become part of your routine, they require less cognitive effort and emotional force. The behavior becomes automatic through repetition. This is the moment discipline turns into identity. You no longer have to convince yourself to perform the habit. You simply do it because it is who you are. When difficult actions become rituals, they stop consuming energy. They begin producing it. The art of making hard things feel easy is not about removing difficulty. It is about rewiring your relationship with it. It is about reducing friction, closing the gap between intention and action, and establishing momentum that carries you forward even when emotion does not. The truth is, every disciplined person you admire has mastered this art. They feel the same discomfort you feel. They have the same resistance. They hear the same excuses echoing in their minds. The difference is that they have learned not to bow to them. They act anyway. They begin before they feel ready. They move through the moment when others stop. This chapter is a doorway into a new relationship with discipline, where the hard things are still hard, but they no longer intimidate you. You learn to step into them with confidence. You learn to embrace the first 5 minutes. You learn to silence negotiation. You learn to celebrate the small wins. And as you continue this practice, something profound happens. The tasks that once felt overwhelming become manageable. The habits that once felt heavy become familiar. The discipline you once forced becomes the identity you naturally embody.
When the hard things begin to feel easier, your life begins to expand. Your capacity grows, your confidence grows, your self-trust grows, and the future that once felt distant becomes reachable. Because the secret was never about eliminating difficulty. It was about mastering it. And now with this knowledge, you are prepared to go even deeper, to create rituals that build your discipline without relying on motivation, to turn daily actions into the architecture of your new identity. The next chapter will show you how.
Chapter 5. The Ritual That Builds Discipline Without Motivation. There is a quiet moment each day that determines who you are becoming. It happens before the noise begins, before the messages arrive, before the world demands your attention. It is the moment you wake up. In that first breath of morning, your mind is unmarked by the day, your choices are clean, your direction is undecided. In that moment, you are free to build or free to repeat. This chapter is about the power hidden in that moment, the power of ritual, the power of doing what must be done regardless of how you feel. Motivation rises and falls with emotion, but ritual stands firm. It anchors your discipline to something deeper than desire. Ritual gives structure to your intention, and structure builds the version of you that remains consistent even on the days you feel unstable. Most people misunderstand discipline. They believe disciplined people are fueled by constant motivation, elevated mood, and unwavering excitement. But the truth is far from it. The most disciplined people are the ones who have learned to detach action from emotion. They do not wait to feel inspired. They do not negotiate with discomfort. They follow their ritual because the ritual is part of their identity. When you create rituals, you remove the burden of choice. Choice is draining. Choice invites hesitation. Choice invites self-doubt. Should I do this now or later? Am I in the right mood? Do I have the energy? Ritual eliminates the debate. It turns the behavior into something expected and predictable. The moment the ritual begins, the mind recognizes its role. A ritual is a promise to yourself, performed consistently until it becomes instinct. To understand why rituals matter, you must understand how your brain handles decision-making. Every decision you make requires mental energy. The more decisions you face, the more fatigued your mind becomes. By the end of the day, your decision-making ability deteriorates. This is called decision fatigue. It is the reason you can be strong all day and fall into old habits at night. It is not weakness, it is depletion. Rituals conserve mental energy by reducing decisions. When your morning has structure, your mind does not wander into negotiation. You wake up, you perform the ritual, you piece together the actions not through debate, but through design. A powerful ritual begins with clarity. You must decide what habits matter and why. If your ritual is packed with tasks that do not contribute to your growth, it becomes clutter instead of clarity. The purpose of ritual is not to overwhelm your morning, it is to anchor it. Start with the habit that moves your life forward. It may be exercise, writing, reading, studying, or practicing reflection. Choose the ritual that connects you to the future you want. Then, build your environment around it. People often rely on motivation because motivation feels emotional and dramatic. It feels exciting. Ritual feels simple, but simplicity is what gives ritual its power. Complexity collapses under pressure. Simplicity survives. A morning ritual, even a small one, signals to your mind that the day has a direction. It tells your brain that the first decision has been made, and once the first decision is made, the second becomes easier. Momentum gathers quietly, confidence grows invisibly, progress begins even before you notice it. The most effective rituals are not built on intensity, they are built on consistency. A ritual should be achievable even on your worst days. If your ritual depends on energy or enthusiasm, it is not a ritual, it is a mood. A ritual should be simple enough that you can perform it when you are tired, frustrated, stressed, or distracted. The power of ritual is not seen on your best days. It is seen on the days you do not want to show up, but you do anyway. This is where identity deepens. When you perform a ritual in the absence of motivation, you prove to yourself something most people never learn. You are reliable. You are consistent. You can trust yourself. Self-trust is one of the most valuable strengths you can build. When you trust yourself, your word becomes powerful. Your goals become more than ideas. They become instructions. Ritual does not only apply to mornings. Evening rituals are equally important. The way you end your day determines how you begin the next one. Reflection, preparation, and closure give your mind a sense of completion. Simple actions, like writing tomorrow's priorities, cleaning your workspace, or reading for peace, invite the brain to release its grip on stress. When the mind knows tomorrow already has a direction, it rests easier. Ritual also protects you from emotional storms. When life becomes stressful, unpredictable, or confusing, ritual becomes a refuge. It stabilizes you. It reminds you that progress continues no matter how chaotic the outside world becomes. Ritual is your anchor in the storm. This is why people who practice ritual recover faster from setbacks. They do not rely on how they feel to continue. They rely on what they have built. Their foundation supports them. As you build your ritual, something subtle yet powerful will happen. The habits that once felt forced begin to feel natural. The actions that once felt uncomfortable become grounding. This shift marks the transition from discipline to identity. When your ritual becomes part of who you are, you no longer push against yourself. You act in harmony with your direction. The art of building a ritual is not about adding more to your life. It is about subtracting distraction, removing the noise, removing the excuses, removing the gaps between intention and action. A ritual closes the space where hesitation lives. To create a ritual that lasts, you must protect it. Treat it with respect. Do not betray your ritual casually. When you skip it without resistance, you create permission that weakens it. But when you protect it, even with a shortened version, you reinforce its importance. There will be mornings when you wake up late, evenings when you feel exhausted, days where life interferes. These are the moments that will define your ritual. A shortened ritual is far more powerful than skipping entirely. 5 minutes of discipline protects the identity you are forming. Skipping destroys it. People often underestimate the compound effect of ritual because the results are not instant. Rituals are seeds. They grow silently. Their impact is revealed slowly. But when those seeds break through the surface, they produce results that seem sudden and surprising. Outsiders call it luck. They call it talent. They call it natural discipline. They never see the quiet rituals that built the foundation long before the results were visible. Ritual is how you build discipline without needing motivation. Ritual is how you transform identity without dramatic gestures. Ritual is how you change your life quietly and consistently. By now you understand that motivation is a spark, not fuel. Identity is the foundation, not a slogan. And ritual is the structure that holds everything together. Your life will always move in the direction of your rituals, not the ones you plan, not the ones you talk about, the ones you perform. The moment you bring ritual into your life, you stop being led by emotion and start being led by intention. You break the cycle of inconsistency. You prove to yourself that discipline is not something you wait for. It is something you create. And once ritual shapes your identity, habits stop being something you try to build. They become the natural expression of who you are. Next, we will go deeper. we will address not only how to create good habits, but how to destroy the ones that silently sabotage your progress. Because building is powerful, but removing is transformative.
Chapter 6. Destroying the behaviors that hold you back. There is something most people never understand about progress. Your life does not improve only by adding new habits. Your life improves by removing the hidden behaviors that silently poison your growth. It is not always the dramatic failures that stop you. It is the small, repeated behaviors that seem harmless but slowly shape your identity, drain your confidence, and sabotage your momentum. You are not only the sum of what you do. You are the sum of what you tolerate. Progress is not only built through addition, it is built through subtraction. Removing distractions, removing temptations, removing patterns that sabotage who you were becoming, clearing the mental and emotional space for discipline to thrive. In the same way a gardener removes weeds to protect the seed, you must remove the habits that choke the life out of your potential. You cannot grow powerful roots if old habits are still wrapped around your foundation. Discipline is not only the pursuit of more, it is the courage to let go. The most dangerous habits are not always the obvious ones. It is not always the catastrophic decisions. It is the soft habits, the subtle ones, the repeated escapes that feel like relief but cost you more than you realize. Distraction masquerading as productivity, procrastination disguised as planning, comfort pretending to be self-care, excuses shaped like logic, confidence drained through comparison, validation chased through approval. These habits do not announce themselves loudly. They whisper. They justify themselves. They arrive disguised as self-preservation when in reality they are self-limitation. The first habit that must be destroyed is the habit of delay. Delay is the enemy of progress. Delay is the oxygen of excuses. Delay trains your brain to believe that your dreams are negotiable. Every time you delay action, you reinforce the story that your future can wait. But the future never waits. The future becomes the present, and the present becomes regret. The second habit that quietly destroys growth is emotional escape. This happens through entertainment, through constant scrolling, through overuse of technology, through excessive comfort. The escape is subtle. It feels harmless. But when escape becomes habitual, life becomes passive. You stop engaging with possibility. You stop directing your energy. You stop applying your strength. Every escape steals a small piece of your potential, and potential does not disappear all at once. It fades. It slips. It erodes. The third destructive habit is the obsession with perfection. Many people never start because they fear imperfect beginnings. They want the perfect plan, the perfect strategy, the perfect timing. But perfection is a trap disguised as ambition. The pursuit of perfection paralyzes progress. The person who demands perfection never allows themselves the grace to grow. Growth requires imperfection. Progress is born in the attempt. The willingness to start without certainty is one of the most powerful habits you can build. Because action, even imperfect action, teaches. Waiting teaches nothing. The fourth habit that must be destroyed is the obsession with validation. When your sense of worth depends on approval, you become limited by the expectations of others. You fear judgment. You fear rejection. You fear misunderstanding. So you shrink your dreams to fit inside the comfort of acceptance. The need for constant validation kills ambition. It suffocates creativity. It silences authenticity. When you depend on the applause of others, your direction changes with their opinions. Belief comes from within, not from the echo of approval.
The fifth destructive habit is comparison. Comparison steals gratitude. It steals confidence. It steals focus. When you compare your path to someone else's highlight, you forget the battles they fought and the sacrifices they made. You forget your own progress. You forget that timing is different for everyone. Comparison creates pressure without purpose. It pulls you away from your path and distracts you from your growth. The only competitor you need is the version of yourself that did less than you today. Another subtle habit that destroys discipline is the belief that you need to feel ready. Readiness is a comforting lie. Readiness suggests that fear will disappear, that doubt will vanish, that confidence will arrive before action. But readiness is born from action, not the other way around. If you wait to feel ready, you will wait forever. Destroying negative habits begins with awareness, but is completed through replacement. The mind dislikes emptiness. When you remove a behavior, you must replace it with one that serves the same emotional purpose without the destructive outcome. For example, if scrolling calms your anxiety, replace it with breathing exercises, walking, journaling, or reading something meaningful. If procrastination numbs overwhelm, break tasks into small parts rather than avoiding them entirely. You cannot destroy a habit by hating it. You destroy a habit by replacing it. Replacing poor habits also requires understanding the emotional reward they provide. Every habit offers something. Escape offers relief. Comparison offers distraction. Perfection offers control. Validation offers comfort. If you only remove the habit without addressing the emotional need, another destructive habit will form in its place. To destroy habits that hold you back, you must think like a strategist, not a critic. You must observe without shame. You must evaluate without self-punishment. Shame does not build discipline. Awareness does. Responsibility does. Choice does. Another key to eliminating destructive habits is altering your environment. Just as new habits require support, old habits require disruption. If your environment feeds the habit, your progress will suffer. If your environment interrupts the habit, your progress will thrive. This is why eliminating triggers matters. Put your phone in another room when you work. Remove unhealthy foods from your environment. Limit conversations that drain you. Surround yourself with reminders of the identity you are building, not the identity you are leaving behind. You must become the architect of your environment, not the victim of it. But perhaps the most important part of destroying bad habits is the willingness to sit with discomfort. Negative habits often exist because they temporarily relieve discomfort. They distract you. They numb you. They quiet your mind. Removing the habit means facing the discomfort directly. This is where most people break. They remove the habit but cannot handle the discomfort that rises. They feel the anxiety or boredom or uncertainty and run back to the familiar escape. But if you can sit with the discomfort, breathe through it, and remain present, something powerful happens. The discomfort passes. The craving fades. The mind adapts. Discomfort is temporary, but growth is permanent. When you destroy the behaviors that hold you back, you create space for discipline to take root. You create clarity. You create confidence. Every time you choose growth over escape, you reinforce responsibility. You strengthen identity. You earn self-respect. Removing destructive habits does not make life easier. It makes life clearer. You become more aware of your time. You value your energy. You protect your focus. You stop betraying yourself. The process is not instantaneous. It takes time. It takes patience. It takes willingness to face the parts of yourself that once served a purpose, but no longer align with who you are becoming. But the moment you remove the behaviors that hold you back, your transformation accelerates. Progress becomes visible. Momentum becomes natural. New habits grow faster when the old ones no longer compete. And now that the ground is clear and your foundation is forming, you are ready for the next step. The step where you train your mind not only to accept discipline, but to crave it. Where discipline becomes something you desire, not something you force. Where progress becomes satisfying, not exhausting. Where your habits build not only structure in your life, but pride in who you are.
Chapter 7. Training your mind to crave progress. There is a moment in every transformation when discipline begins to feel different. What once felt like force begins to feel like desire. What once felt like a burden begins to feel like purpose. What once required pressure begins to feel natural. This moment does not arrive through luck or talent. It arrives through the psychological process of teaching your mind to crave progress. To understand how to make your mind crave progress, you must understand the profound truth that your brain is always learning what to want. Desire is not fixed. Desire is trained. Your mind is constantly observing your behavior, looking for patterns, and deciding what should feel rewarding. If you repeat a habit often enough, your brain begins to crave the emotional reward connected to it. Even if the habit is destructive, the brain learns to want the feeling that follows it. This is why bad habits can feel addictive. It is not that the habit itself is powerful, it is the reward that follows it. The moment of pleasure, the escape, the relief, the distraction, the numbing. The brain learns to associate the behavior with a temporary emotional payoff. But here's the most important part. That same mechanism can be used to build unstoppable habits. If you teach your mind to connect progress with satisfaction, your brain learns to crave improvement. If you teach your mind to associate challenge with reward, discomfort becomes meaningful. If you teach your mind to link discipline with pride, consistency becomes desirable. You can train your mind to crave the very habits that shape your future. The shift begins with recognition. Most people do not recognize progress because they only look for the final result. They dismiss the process as unimportant because it seems small. They ignore the steps and wait for the destination. This blindness kills motivation. If your mind never receives the signal that progress is happening, it never learns to want more of it. The truth is simple. Your mind cannot crave what it does not notice. To train your mind to crave progress, you must track it. You must see it. You must acknowledge it. You must celebrate it. This does not mean celebrating in dramatic ways. It means noticing the improvement, feeling the pride, giving your brain a moment of reward for the action. Over time, this recognition becomes the fuel that turns discipline into desire. Progress measured is progress multiplied. When you write one page and acknowledge it, your brain receives a signal that the action mattered. When you complete a workout and reflect on the effort, your mind connects exertion with pride. When you read for 10 minutes and notice the calm it gives you, your mind associates the habit with peace. This emotional connection is what teaches your brain to want the habit again. Recognition is the language your brain responds to. Another critical part of training your mind to crave progress is embracing the concept of ritual satisfaction. Think of a musician who sits with an instrument daily. At first, it is frustrating, confusing, uncomfortable. But eventually something changes. The sound becomes smoother. The movements become graceful. The practice becomes a form of expression. What began as discipline becomes art. The shift happens because the mind begins to crave mastery. When you see yourself improving, even slowly, your brain begins to anticipate the satisfaction of growth. This anticipation releases dopamine before the task even begins. The craving arrives before the action. This is the psychological moment when discipline feels like instinct. You are no longer forcing yourself, you are being pulled by your desire to improve.
To reach this level, you must stop treating progress as something distant and start treating it as something present. You must stop waiting to feel proud and start creating moments of pride daily. Small wins feed the brain. They keep the fire alive. There is another powerful tool for training your mind to crave progress. It is the use of identity-aligned reinforcement. This means connecting your actions with who you believe you are becoming. When you say, "I am proud of myself for showing up," your brain learns to desire consistency. When you think, "Every time I do this, I am becoming stronger," your brain learns to desire strength. When you say, "This habit is building the future version of me," your brain learns to desire transformation. You are giving meaning to your discipline. Meaning creates desire. Human behavior is not driven only by logic. It is driven by emotional relevance. If progress does not feel personally meaningful, the mind will not crave it. You must give your habits emotional relevance by linking them to your identity. The stronger the emotional link, the stronger the craving. One of the greatest psychological shifts you will ever experience is when you stop chasing results and start chasing growth. Results may take weeks, months, or years. Growth happens today. The results may be distant. The progress is immediate. When you learn to appreciate the process, you learn to crave the continuation of it. There is a misconception that people who are disciplined never struggle. The truth is, they struggle, but the struggle feels meaningful. They feel alive in it. They feel tested, not defeated. They feel stretched, not broken. They see effort as part of their identity, not a punishment. When effort aligns with identity, discipline becomes fulfilling. Your mind is constantly asking a silent question. What does this mean about me? If your interpretation of effort is negative, your mind will avoid it. If your interpretation of effort is empowering, your mind will seek it. This is why language matters. I have to train becomes I get to train. I must study becomes I am building my future. I need to change becomes I am becoming someone stronger. When your language reflects growth, your mind begins to desire the actions that create it. There's also a biological truth that supports this transformation. The brain strengthens the neural pathways that are used repeatedly. Every time you choose discipline over escape, you reinforce a pathway that makes the next choice easier. Progress becomes easier not because your life changes, but because your brain changes. Repetition builds craving. The more frequently you perform a habit, the stronger the craving becomes. But repetition must be paired with recognition. When repetition is paired with pride, identity shifts. When repetition is paired with meaning, desire forms. When repetition is paired with progress, you evolve. This evolution is not loud. It is not dramatic. It is subtle. There will not be a single moment when you realize you crave progress. You will simply notice that you no longer need to negotiate with yourself. You will notice that the habits you once resisted now feel incomplete when skipped. You will begin to feel restless when you do not pursue growth. Your mind will begin to miss progress. That is when the transformation is complete. When the absence of progress feels more uncomfortable than the presence of effort. When discipline feels like alignment, when growth feels like oxygen. Craving progress does not mean every moment feels easy. It means every moment feels purposeful. You begin to understand that the journey never ends because the journey itself becomes your reward. This craving fuels confidence. It fuels resilience. It fuels identity. You become someone who doesn't wait for life to change. You become someone who changes life through behavior. When your mind learns to crave progress, failure no longer defeats you, it informs you. Setbacks no longer paralyze you, they challenge you. Discomfort no longer frightens you, it guides you. You begin living not as someone who fears difficulty, but as someone who is strengthened by it. This is the moment you graduate from forcing habits to defending them. Because once your mind craves progress, discipline is no longer something you chase, it becomes something you protect. And that is the fire that carries you forward to the next chapter, where you learn not only how to build and crave progress, but how to protect your habits when life becomes unpredictable, chaotic, emotional, and overwhelming. Because the journey of habit does not end with desire. It continues with defense. And that defense is the next step on your path.
Chapter 8. Handling Setbacks Without Collapsing. No matter how disciplined you become, no matter how consistent your rituals are, and no matter how deeply you crave progress, there will come a day when life hits you with something you did not expect. A disruption that throws off your rhythm, emotion that overwhelms your clarity, an event that interrupts your momentum, a moment when everything felt aligned and suddenly it does not. This is the moment many people fall apart. They treat setbacks as proof that progress has been lost. They treat interruptions as signs that the discipline was not real. They treat mistakes as validation of their old identity. One missed day turns into a week. 1 week turns into abandonment. They declare their failure long before anything is truly lost. But setbacks are not the opposite of progress. They are part of it. To handle setbacks without collapsing, you must first change your perspective of what progress looks like. Progress is not a straight line. It bends and curves. It climbs and drops. It pauses and restarts. Progress is messy because humans are messy. It includes mistakes, distractions, emotions, and unexpected shifts. The person who succeeds is not the person who never falls. It is the person who continues after falling. The first step in handling setbacks is eliminating the belief that a mistake equals failure. Too many people treat consistency as perfection. If they miss a day, they act as if the whole habit has been destroyed. But missing one day does not break a habit. Quitting because of one missed day does. Imagine a builder constructing a house. One storm arrives. One day is lost. Does the builder throw the blueprint away? Does the builder burn the foundation and walk into the woods? No. The builder returns when the storm passes and continues building. The storm delayed the progress, but it did not define it. You must treat your habits with the same logic. The second step is refusing to let emotion dictate your story. Setbacks generate emotion, frustration, shame, disappointment, a feeling of returning to square one. But emotion is not truth. Emotion is reaction. The truth is simpler. You were moving forward, something interrupted you, and now you continue. Most people collapse not because of the setback, but because of the story they attach to it. They say things like, "I knew I would fail. This always happens. I was not built for this." Setbacks do not destroy progress. Stories do. Learn to observe emotion without believing it. Feel the frustration, but do not surrender to it. Experience the disappointment, but do not magnify it. Let the emotion move through you, and then return to the habit as if the interruption were simply a red light on the road. The light turned green again, you continue driving. The third step is shortening the gap between the setback and the restart. The most powerful habit you can ever build is the habit of beginning again immediately. Not Monday, not next month, not when you feel ready, not when motivation returns. Begin the moment you notice the setback. The longer you wait, the heavier the comeback feels. Time multiplies doubt. Time strengthens excuses. Time makes the restart feel like a new beginning instead of a continuation. Your power is in returning quickly. A short interruption does not have the strength to steal your momentum. There is a concept known as emotional flexibility. It is the ability to shift your internal state without letting circumstances freeze you in place. Emotion may slow you down, but it does not stop you. The same way a tree bends in the wind without breaking, emotional flexibility allows you to navigate pressure, change direction, and adapt without collapse. The fourth step in handling setbacks is recognizing the difference between breaking and bending. Life will bend your plans. It will bend your energy. It will bend your expectations. But bending does not mean breaking. Breaking only happens when you decide that the bend cannot be recovered. You are far more resilient than you believe. You have survived moments you once thought would end you.
You have adapted to circumstances you were never prepared for. You have risen after disappointments that felt irreversibly painful. You already possess resilience. Discipline simply organizes that resilience into forward movement. The fifth step is remembering that discipline is not built during moments of strength, it is built during moments of weakness. Anyone can be consistent when life is calm. Anyone can follow a plan when energy is high. Anyone can stay focused when emotions are settled. But discipline becomes real when everything in you wants to stop and you choose to continue anyway. That choice, even one small action taken during difficulty, builds unshakable self-respect. Self-respect is the foundation of identity. Setbacks offer opportunities for identity reinforcement. When you restart after an interruption, you tell your mind, "I am not someone who quits." When you act in the presence of difficulty, you tell your mind, "I am someone who follows through." When you refuse to allow setback to become surrender, you teach your identity that discipline is not a phase, it is a standard. The sixth step is understanding that setbacks teach more than success ever could. When everything is going well, there is nothing to analyze. When something interrupts your progress, you have the opportunity to learn, to identify patterns, to recognize vulnerabilities, to see emotional triggers, to adjust strategy. Every setback is information. Setbacks are feedback dressed as frustration. Ask yourself questions without judgment. What caused the interruption? Was it exhaustion, procrastination, emotional overwhelm, lack of preparation, or environmental distraction? Once you identify the cause, you can adapt your structure. You become smarter than your setback. The seventh step is forgiving yourself quickly. Self-punishment does not build discipline. Shame does not produce strength. If self-hatred builds success, the most successful people in the world would be the ones who criticize themselves most harshly. But human beings do not thrive under punishment. They thrive under belief. Forgive yourself, not because you are weak, but because forgiveness frees your attention to return to the work. The eighth step is remembering why you began. When setbacks cloud your focus, revisit the vision, the reason, the future you are building. Discipline without purpose becomes heavy. Discipline with purpose becomes meaningful. When your why is clear, your return becomes easier. Progress is not the absence of setback. Progress is the refusal to give setback the final say. There will be seasons in life when the weight feels heavier. There will be times when your pace slows. There will be moments when everything seems harder than before. These moments are not signs that you are unprepared. They are signs that you are evolving. The stronger you become, the more life will test the strength you built. Not to break you, but to shape you. When you learn to handle setbacks without collapsing, you become unstoppable. Life may delay you, but it cannot defeat you. Emotion may shake you, but it cannot own you. Failure may visit, but it doesn't get to stay. You will not always feel strong, but you can always choose to continue. And that choice is what separates those who dream from those who build. Now you are ready for the next evolution, not just surviving setbacks, but becoming someone who carries discipline like a second nature. Someone others look at and say, how do they remain so focused? How do they stay consistent? How do they move forward regardless of what happens? Because the next chapter is where discipline becomes identity, and identity becomes destiny. You are not done. You are just getting started.
Chapter 9. Becoming the most disciplined person in the room. There is a presence you notice immediately when it enters a room. It is not the loudest voice or the flashiest confidence. It is not the one trying to be seen, heard, or praised. It is quiet. It is composed. It is focused. You can feel the steadiness in their energy. You can sense the weight in their posture. You can see the clarity in their eyes. That presence is the signature of discipline. Becoming the most disciplined person in the room is not about superiority or arrogance. It is about earning an unshakable trust in yourself. It is about carrying a sense of internal order that others recognize without you ever needing to announce it. This level of discipline is not random and not accidental. It is created by the choices you make when no one is watching. People often believe that discipline is impressive only when it is public, when others can see the work, the effort, the strength. But true discipline lives in the unseen moments. It lives in the quiet decisions. It lives in the restraint that never gets applause. It lives in the early mornings and the late nights and the sacrifices that no one will ever know about. You become the most disciplined person in the room through what you are willing to do without recognition. At this level, discipline becomes less about forcing yourself and more about carrying yourself. It becomes part of your nervous system, part of your decision-making, part of your identity. The habits you once struggled to execute become standard. You no longer question whether you will follow through. You simply do, because it aligns with who you are. The foundation of this transformation begins with presence. Presence is the ability to stay with yourself mentally and emotionally, regardless of what is happening around you. Most people are reactive. Their attention is fragile. Their emotions are easily hijacked. Their focus belongs to the distractions around them. But disciplined people control the space within their mind. Presence is not silence. Presence is control. It is the art of choosing where your attention goes instead of allowing your environment to choose for you. When you are present, you are not pulled by impulse or noise. You are steady within yourself. From presence comes power. The second defining trait of the most disciplined person in the room is emotional maturity. Discipline is not only about what you do, it is about how you handle how you feel. Emotions are powerful, persuasive, and persistent. They attempt to influence behavior. They demand attention. They want immediate gratification. The disciplined person does not suppress emotions. They acknowledge them, but they do not bow to them. They feel frustration and still remain focused. They feel fear and still move forward. They feel doubt and still decide. Emotional maturity is not the absence of feeling. It is the ability to feel without losing direction. When your emotions are allowed to exist without controlling your actions, you become stronger than impulse. You become trustworthy to yourself. The third trait is self-respect. Many people misunderstand discipline as restriction or punishment. In truth, discipline is an act of respect. It is the acknowledgement that your time matters, your goals matter, your potential matters. You matter. When you respect yourself, you stop breaking promises you make to yourself. You stop tolerating behaviors that contradict your values. You stop abandoning your own progress. Self-respect is not a mindset. It is a behavior. The fourth trait is simplicity. The most disciplined people do not complicate their lives. They remove what does not matter. They eliminate unnecessary decisions. They reduce distraction and avoid chaos. Their routines are simple but intentional. Their priorities are clear and few. Complexity kills consistency. Simplicity protects it. When your life becomes cluttered, your focus fragments. When your focus fragments, your discipline collapses. Simplicity is not small thinking. Simplicity is concentrated thinking. The fifth trait is consistency. Discipline may start with a single decision, but it is shaped by repeated action. Consistency is not perfection, nor is it speed. It is repetition. It is the willingness to show up again and again and again, even when you are tired.
even when life is inconvenient, even when progress feels invisible. The most disciplined person in the room is not the one who works the hardest for one day. It is the one who works when it is inconvenient, continues when it is boring, and returns when it is difficult. Consistency is not glamorous, but it is unstoppable. The sixth trait is silence. Not the silence of shyness or timidity, but the silence of confidence. True discipline does not need validation. It does not need applause. It does not need announcement. When you know you are doing the work, when you know you are keeping your promises, when you know you are moving forward, you no longer require permission or encouragement from others. Silence becomes a strength. Noise becomes optional. The seventh trait is adaptability. Discipline does not mean rigidity. Rigidity breaks easily. If your plan collapses every time life shifts, your discipline is fragile. Adaptability allows you to pivot without losing direction. If the plan changes, the purpose does not. If the schedule shifts, the standard remains. Adaptability is the ability to adjust without abandoning. The eighth trait is standards. Discipline is fueled by expectations, not the expectations others place on you, but the ones you place on yourself. Standards define what you accept and what you refuse to allow. When your standards rise, your life rises to meet them. When your standards remain low, your results shrink to match. You do not become disciplined by forcing action. You become disciplined by raising your standards so high that anything less feels uncomfortable. The ninth trait is ownership. Ownership means taking responsibility for your choices, your energy, your story, your behavior, and your direction. Ownership means you stop blaming circumstances, people, or luck. It means you stop waiting for someone to save you. It means you understand that your life is shaped by decisions, not destiny. Ownership is freedom. The 10th, and perhaps the most transformative, is identity. When discipline becomes part of who you believe you are, everything changes. You no longer try to be disciplined, you are disciplined. You no longer try to keep promises, you keep them. You no longer try to act with consistency, you embody it. Identity is the crown discipline builds. People often wonder how some individuals seem immune to distraction, to laziness, to inconsistency. The truth is, they are not immune. They simply developed the strength to choose their future over their impulse. They built a self-image that demands follow-through. When you walk into a room with discipline woven into your identity, you do not need to speak about your commitment. People sense it. They see it in the way you listen without drifting. They hear it in the way you speak with clarity. They notice it in your posture, your timing, your presence. Discipline becomes visible, even in silence. And here's the most unexpected part. When you become the most disciplined person in the room, you do not intimidate others, you inspire them. Your presence challenges others to elevate themselves. You become a mirror that reflects what they are capable of. You become proof that change is possible. Becoming the most disciplined person in the room is not about being better than anyone else. It is about being better than the version of yourself that once believed you could not be. It is about carrying yourself with a strength that does not demand attention, but naturally commands respect. It is about living with standards that reflect your values, your purpose, and your future. It is about showing the world, not through talk, but through action, that discipline creates a different kind of life. When discipline becomes your identity, Chapter 10. The version of you built on unbreakable habits. There is a moment in your journey when everything you have been building stops feeling like effort and begins feeling like truth. A moment when your habits no longer feel like tasks on a checklist, but expressions of who you are. A moment when you no longer wake up wondering whether you will follow through, because follow through is your default. This is not the result of motivation. It is not the result of luck. It is the result of transformation. You have been becoming someone new. At first, the journey felt heavy. Discipline felt like a battle between who you were and who you wanted to become. The old habits called you back. The old identity whispered its familiar doubts. The old routines begged for your attention. Growth felt unnatural because it was unfamiliar. But with each choice, each repetition, each moment you refused to surrender to the comfort of your past, you sculpted a different future. Habits are not small things. They are not minor details. They are the quiet architecture of destiny. Every powerful person, every resilient mind, every successful path is built on the foundation of what is done repeatedly. You began by forcing yourself. That is where almost everyone begins. By convincing your mind that discomfort is not danger. By showing up even when your emotions were loud. By beginning before you felt ready. By restarting when others would have quit. That resistance, that willingness to struggle, created the first cracks in the identity that once held you back. Transformation requires disruption. Then you learned how the mind rewards consistency. You began to understand how your brain reacts to progress, how desire is shaped, how cravings form. You paired discipline with positive reinforcement, and slowly the brain that once resisted your habits began supporting them. You became someone who could act even without motivation, someone who did not crumble when momentum was interrupted, someone who did not surrender under pressure. Then discipline shifted again. It became something deeper, something quieter. Your decisions began to align with your identity. The actions that once felt forced became natural. You stopped negotiating with your goals. You stopped leaning on emotion. You stopped searching for comfort as your compass. You built rituals. You protected your time and energy. You removed the habits that drained you. You honored the habits that shaped you. This is the version of you built on unbreakable habits. To live as this version of yourself is to understand the power of consistency. The small things you once dismissed became the roots of your stability. Waking up with intention, moving your body, feeding your mind, tracking your progress, reflecting without judgment, protecting your environment, respecting your standards. These are not tasks. They are anchors. They hold your identity in place. Discipline used to feel like a demand. Now, it feels like integrity. You do what you say because you have earned your own respect. You keep promises because your character depends on it. You follow through because it is who you are. There's a freedom in this that many never experience. The freedom of not being owned by impulse. The freedom of not dancing to the rhythm of emotion. The freedom of not being controlled by distraction or doubt. When your habits are unbreakable, you are no longer at war with yourself. You move through life with clarity and peace. The world around you may remain chaotic. People may continue living by instinct and reaction. Distractions may still tempt you. Stress may still arise. But you navigate it from a position of strength because your habits carry you forward. They lift you when emotion feels heavy. They stabilize you when uncertainty shakes the ground. They remind you who you are when circumstances test your identity. To live as the version of you built on unbreakable habits is also to understand responsibility differently. You no longer blame circumstances. You no longer wait for permission. You no longer depend on inspiration. Responsibility becomes empowerment. Taking ownership becomes your advantage. You realize that control over your habits gives you control over your life. There is a peace that comes with knowing you can rely on yourself, a confidence that does not require praise, a security that does not require perfection. You no longer live in fear of failure, because failure no longer means the end. It simply means adjust and continue. You have become someone who continues. That is rare. That is powerful. That is unbreakable. The version of you built on unbreakable habits lives with gratitude for the struggle it took to get here. Because without struggle, discipline would not exist. Without discomfort, growth would never have begun. Without setback, resilience would never have been created. The past versions of you were not mistakes. They were steps, necessary steps, hard steps, valuable steps. You do not need to reject who you were. You only need to honor who you chose to become. Unbreakable habits do not guarantee an easy life. They guarantee a strong life. A life where you meet challenges with capacity. A life where you face uncertainty with clarity. A life where you navigate disappointment with dignity. Strength is not the absence of struggle. Strength is the ability to stand through it. This chapter is the beginning of the life you build from this moment forward. The habits you have created are tools. They are weapons against doubt and distraction. They are guides through confusion and emotion. They are the structure through which your potential becomes achievement. You now understand what many people never learned. Discipline is not punishment. It is freedom. Habit is not restriction. It is direction. Consistency is not pressure. It is transformation. You are living as the version of yourself that once felt impossible to become. And the most extraordinary part is this: you are not finished. Your habits are unbreakable, but your growth remains open. Your direction remains alive. Your journey continues. You are not defined by the past, limited by the present, or finished creating your future. You are proof that change is possible. Proof that identity can evolve. Proof that discipline can be built. Proof that habits can shape destiny. The version of you built on unbreakable habits is not the end of the story. It is the beginning of a life that is finally yours to design, not react to. A life constructed with intention, a life navigated with clarity, a life fueled by resilience and guided by purpose. This is who you have become, and this is who you now have the power to remain.